I guess one of my idols or heroes is Art Bell.
Oh,
Because not only would he be respectful of the person telling the story, he just had such an instinct for spotting the story and knowing, all right, I've got a beginning, middle, and end. Here's how we're going to tease it out. He saw it, miles away.
here's an interesting thing about Art Bell. By the way, I know Art Bell or knew Art Bell, and I was on his show. I think in '96, I was on Art Bell's show, and I put him on Dark Skies. I made Art Bell a member of Majestic 12.
I forgot about that.
He was a member. He played William S. Paley,
That's
the
right.
head of CBS.
Yeah. I was at a fundraiser last weekend for LBJ. I heard Majestic mentioned in the same breath as Oswald.
No, I had that check bill, and the CIA knows we're completely clean.
CIA thought the Bay of Pigs was a good idea, too.
I don't give a damn what they say at cocktail parties. Alan, you're in the Warren Commission. Is Majestic under any suspicion whatsoever?
No, they're completely focused on that sick communist Oswald.
Perception, not reality. If we don't get this under control now, Majestic's going to be common knowledge by the end of the century.
He talked about it forever. Now I remember that. Wow.
And listen, I don't think Art would take exception to what I'm about to say. The difference between Art and George Knapp is Art was a entertainer with the show. George is a journalist who sometimes is on a show, right? And Art would let things stand just because, well, I mean, that's what they say, right? So on the show that I was doing with Art Bell, I was on to talk about, this is one of my first interviews ever on the UFO topic. I wasn't interviewing him. He was interviewing me because of Dark Skies.
All right. Now, for quite a period of time, NBC advertised Dark Skies with us because, of course, of a lot of the material that we have here on the air. And I've so much wanted to have Bryce Zabel on during that period, but I thought, no, the audience is going to buy this as a infomercial or something, and I didn't want to do that. So I waited until the advertising, which ran its course, prior to the and just after the pilot, until it ran its course. And now I feel very comfortable in doing it because a lot of you who heard the advertising, zillions of you, have many questions. And so here is the guy who is the executive producer of Dark Skies who will answer your questions. And I'm going to let him tell us a little bit about himself. Bryce, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Art. I feel like my entire career has been a warm-up for appearing on your show here.
Oh, no. I'm sure that... what's it like, by the way, to give birth to a television series like that? I bet there's a lot of nail-biting and wondering, and what was it like?
Well, you know it is. Any TV series is hard to get on the air these days. It's incredibly difficult. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. And with the material that we've got here, you can imagine there were a lot of extra added attractions to, conspiring to keep us from getting on the air.
Oh, yes.
And so it's been quite an interesting run. I'm sure we'll end up talking a little bit about that tonight.
But as the show started, somebody had called in saying, I'm seeing some lights up in Monterey or something. I don't even remember the location, but it's the California coast. And Art just said, well, we're going to be following this story very carefully tonight. And so every time we'd go to a commercial break, he'd say, and now the lights seem to be down. And it was a show.
People from Los Angeles to San Francisco, and I would add to New Mexico, have reported seeing a mysterious green flash streak across the northeastern sky. Authorities say they don't know what it is. Frank Donnell, a spokesman for NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, says he doesn't have any information on what it is. But he says if it was that high up, it probably was a meteor or a re-entering satellite. And there's a period after that. They could have had another or. I'm sure it's a meteor. The FAA said they've received many reports of the flash from as far away as San Francisco. Said he also had no idea what it is, but it was certainly too high to be an airplane. Here's another one. Hey, Art, something out here in California hit the ground. They tracked the object over a few counties near Yosemite and the Central Valley. It hit here in Mariposa, we think, on a ranch. A close family friend said this. He manages the ranch. said the object lit the sky to almost daytime, and he thought for a second that a beam of light hit the car. So we may have something down on a ranch in California, in the Mariposa area. My. Look out for pods out there.
Is it listed in any books as a great UFO sighting today? I don't think so.
Probably not.
No. But listen, classic radio guy.
Yes.
Really good at what he did. Great voice.
Just everything.
And he stood his ground, and he was good guy. I mean, he wrote a book, I think The Quickening. I mean, he did. He was a great guy.
Quickening was a scary book.
And I mean, loved art.
I don't give me names, but I mean, what kind of static did you take?
Well, mostly it's the concept that to get on the air these days, you have to have something that someone can look at and go, well, that ought to work. And despite the success of the X-Files, I don't think that people would necessarily say, well, a UFO show should just work on its own. I think we had to prove to NBC and that we had a show that had legs. So when I say the resistance, I mean we've had a remarkably good run, but I mean once you take this kind of material and you float it out there, then a lot of people want to give you their comments, and the hardest thing in any television series is to maintain a consistent vision of any kind. So that's been our biggest struggle, I think.
All right. If there is a vision, that vision thing that Bob Dole has so much trouble about, with respect to Dark Skies,
right. What
is the vision?
Well, our vision was simply to, when my co-creator on Dark Skies is Brent Friedman, and I met Brent in, I think it was late 1994, and we started kicking around UFO ideas. He had some pretty interesting true stories to tell me, and I'd done a lot of reading, and we started, talking about what we knew. And the paradigm shift that we call that goes with Dark Skies was simply that instead of doing a science fiction show that might take place in the present or the future, near or far future, we would set it in the past. And once we made the decision to go back to the 60s to start our series, I think that was, really what the vision was all about. And then we kind of expanded from there to say, let's try to do a TV series that's all about the unification theory of UFO. You can call it mythology or theology or actuality, whatever you want, but try to make sense of crop circles and animal mutilations and sky sightings and abductions, and try to come up with one theory that would tie it all together.
So it is going to deal with all of those things. Well, it's already really dealt with crop circles.
Well, I think we planted a lot of seeds in our pilot and our first episode, and hopefully that we'll have a very long run on NBC, in which case we'll have time to harvest a lot of those concepts. Obviously, with crop circles, we probably raised more questions about what the crop circle was really about than we answered. But on the other hand, it sure made for a very. I don't think I've seen a crop circle on a television series, and maybe not even in a film yet.
Actually, I think you're right, Bryce. Hold on one second. I want to remind the audience of something. We're going to get into a lot of interesting areas, obviously, here. And what I would like to do is tell you all that right now, on America Online, in the Periscope area, it's called Periscope, my wife is presently sort of hosting a little get-together of people with regard to questions on Dark Skies. And if you have questions, that is one more avenue where you can broach them. So to get into that chat room, simply go on to America Online, enter keyword Art Bell, and it'll take you to the Periscope area, or enter a keyword Periscope. That'll take you there. When you get there, go into the Grassy Knoll chat room. And if you have a question for Bryce or something about Dark Skies, pose it there, and she will take the best or the cream of the crop and bring them in here.
And by the way, putting him on Majestic 12, I remember when my partner Brent and I thought we would do that, and I went, well, he's like, well, why would Art Bell do that? I said, it's ironic, it's subversive. Let me call him. And I called him up, and there was this kind of long pause, and then he says, I think the first thing he said is, do I get to keep the mustache?
Of course he did.
He didn't. We made him
You made him shave it?
I think that was the thing. But anyway, it was fun. He saw the joke. I mean, which is a lovely thing. For someone to not take themselves so seriously, they can't do something like that. I think it gave him fun. He and his wife of the time came to the set, and we hung out all day, and he had a great time. Yeah. And to be honest with you, he did a very good performance.
Sure. Because he was a performer.
He's a performer.
And what a great nod to the audience who spotted him. They had to just go nuts for it.
Well, that's the kind of thing where 90% of that audience had no knowledge of anything, just another actor, in a scene. But for the 10% who were sort of UFO curious, they knew, and they thought it was pretty wild.
I love it. I put those jokes in my shows all the time that nobody gets except for that one sliver, but it's so special to them.
Because, good stuff can just work on a couple of levels. And as long as one of the levels hits most of the people, you're okay.
Yeah.
All right, back, Bryce, research. There must have been a lot of research. No matter what you ended up doing dramatically or with dramatic license, you had to start out with a base of what you thought reality was.
Sure, although I am sure that a lot of your listeners tonight are going to call in and want to discuss what they see as inconsistencies or incorrect takes on things, and I welcome that. I mean, it's like any TV series. That's the thing that differentiates a TV series, I guess, from a film, is that just because you put an episode on doesn't mean it's not a work in progress. So we'll be able to learn and continue to learn. But in answer to your question about what kind of research went into it, I've been reading on this subject for a number of years, like I'm sure most of your listeners have been doing, and Brent has certainly been interested in it as well. So we started with a base. I've got a fairly large library of UFO materials and so forth, and then of course we kind of dipped our toe in some of the stuff that we're finding on the internet, and I have to admit, the more you read, the more you realize you might as well just take your own crack at what you think might work, because there's so many theories and counter theories out there that almost anything you do is mutually inconsistent with some other theory.
Was it an avocation for you before a vocation?
Well, it was an interest, and I just happen to think it's a very dramatic area to work in. Also, for myself, I happen to believe in the reality of the UFO phenomenon, which not a lot of people that I've run into necessarily share my beliefs. Certainly among a lot of the people that we've had to take the series out to and discuss it with, a lot of them see it simply as a dramatic creation with no bearing in reality. So Brent and I keep our own opinions closely held and try to make an entertaining show, and everybody seems to be happy.
What's your background?
Well, I started in radio in Eugene, Oregon about 20 years ago.
Oh my.
And I kind of got into that TV journalism thing, did local news in Oregon and Arizona. And I came to Los Angeles back in 1980 as the first CNN correspondent.
No kidding.
Yeah, that was kind of a kick, because at the time I gave up an anchor job in Arizona where it was kind of an insecure thing to give it all up and move to L.A. for this CNN, which nobody knew what it stood for. They called us the Chicken Noodle Network when we first got here.
That's right.
But all of us who started at CNN believed in the concept. We thought that if television could really be that global force, that maybe we could, help make things better. And I think that in retrospect, it looks like CNN's turned out to be a pretty good bet.
Oh, it certainly has.
Yeah. So the journalism was my first foray into having to write, for television, writing words and pictures together to match. About 10 years ago, my wife suggested I give screenwriting a try, and I'd never even seen a screenplay at the time. I got a couple of them and said, this looks okay. You don't have to know that many adjectives and adverbs to write a screenplay. So I gave it a shot, and the first two scripts I wrote became TV series, which is incredibly fortuitous and lucky. But
so you're going to encourage 1 million people to give it all up and go to Hollywood, and that just doesn't happen, does it?
No, it really doesn't. And I think it's very unusual, and I certainly have had a hard time. I thought at the time, well, this is pretty cool. You just write a a script and they make a TV series out of it and they send you residual checks. But I was disabused of that over the years. So I'm, for example, getting Dark Skies on at the quality level that it's at right now is really a dream for me. It's
when
terrific.
you guys walked in the door at NBC and they said, "Okay, what have you got?" and you said, "Well, we've got this thing on UFOs."
Sure.
What kind of reception did you
Well,
get?
I got to tell you, that's kind of normally how you might sell a TV series, but everything about getting Dark Skies on the air has been a little different than what normally is the procedure. For example, when Brent and I decided to do this, one of my greatest concerns was that if we just simply went in and pitched kind of a cool UFO story, somebody could dismiss it by saying, well, that's really a terrific story, but you can never come up with 5 years' worth of stories for it. So Brent and I decided to work very hard to answer that objection. So we literally arced out 5 seasons worth of stories, wrote a timeline that went from 75 million BC to the year 2008, and packaged it all up in this ultra-classified briefing book. So by the time we actually, and of course we sent that around to, actually Jeff Sagansky at Sony picked up on it right away, and by the time we got to the various networks, we knew we had a pretty hot property.
Wait a minute, five seasons in one book?
Well, in the not episode by episode and beat by beat, but in the general
The chronology.
The chronology was pretty strong because Beneath Dark Skies is also a very, I think, unusual concept, which is that we plan to let our characters grow old and we plan to let the series move forward. So we're starting in the 60s, but our intention is by New Year's Eve 1999 to have caught up with New Year's Eve 1999 in real time.
Wow.
Yeah, which means
that is a neat idea.
Well, it's challenging, and it's certainly my intention to do it now. And let's knock on wood and hope that NBC will allow us to grow these characters.
That's an intriguing idea. So, is it going to be linear in time, or will it take jumps?
It's not quantum leap. We're not jumping around within our time frame. We feel like what we owe the audience is a reveal, and to jump around would be to have characters knowing things at some time that they didn't know before, and I don't think it would be as fun for the audience to watch, because I think the audience wants to figure out this big mystery about what's really going on at the same time our characters do. So our intention is chronology.
All right. Did you receive any hostility from our government or from the Air Force or from the Navy or anybody else involved? Any serious hostility about doing this?
No one has officially called us up, if you mean, on the phone and said, knock this stuff off.
Right.
Now that we're on the air, we are starting to get more attention, and Brent and I have had a few situations happen where we're not quite sure whether we're being scammed or whether we're being approached, and I think you would have to vote on the side of skepticism in those types of contacts. But let's just put it this way: our profile is rising, and with the rising profile comes some of that stuff. I've heard the Navy is not happy with the Navy being named, but I don't know that that's true.
Well, U.S. Naval Intelligence, in fact, was very much involved, and so I could understand that perhaps they might be a little nervous about it.
Sure.
Listen, I interviewed Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr.
I saw that this week, didn't you?
Last week.
Last week.
And somebody on the Internet's wondering whether you went and talked to Dr. Marcel, or even Jesse Marcel before his death, and in getting any approval for the series or any help.
I wish the answer is no. Didn't talk to either of those people. I wish that I had been able to talk to Jesse Marcel before his death. We simply, there's lots of material out about what Jesse Marcel's story was, and I've certainly read accounts of what his son has had to say. And of course, in Dark Skies, we go one step beyond even what perhaps the theories or the accounts hold. So we came up with our own interpretation of Roswell that was even, more strikingly different than what
Indeed.
The account currently is.
Indeed. I've got to ask this.
Sure.
You remember back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind,
Absolutely.
and the warm, fuzzy little alien.
You bet.
Well, that's what was done for years, and you guys don't have warm, fuzzy little aliens at all.
We don't think they're warm and fuzzy.
That's a good answer.
We reject the notion of the benevolent space brothers. I think that you're certainly accurate. I mean, when Close Encounters came out, I remember a common conversation had by people after they came out of that movie was, boy, you know, if they would just land in my backyard, I'd get on and go away with them.
That's right.
Like Roy Neary did in the movie. And our feeling, our kind of motto at Dark Skies is don't get on the ship, because we just don't think it's where you want to be. And we base this on the literature that's in the movement right now that would imply to me anyway that if whatever the reality of what's going on, it would seem that these visitors, or whatever we want to call them, are at the very least supremely indifferent to what we're up to. So we think that prudence would indicate that you treat them with a certain amount of hands-off status.
Well, you said you believe they are not friendly little guys.
Sure.
Based on?
Well, when I say I believe, I don't know that they're, Dark Skies takes its own interpretation, and we'll, I'm sure, get into it later tonight about, my feeling about Dark Skies being entertainment first. I'm not personally sure whether this interaction is of a completely hostile nature, but I don't think that it's of a benevolent, bringing us into the cosmic universe kind of nature either. So that's really where I come down on a personal level.
All right. Hang tight. We are at the bottom of the hour. We'll take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to replay, free shot on this one, the Dark Skies commercial, and then ask you a little bit about it. How's that?
Terrific. Thanks.
All right. Stay right where you are. From the high desert on a night when green things are streaking through the high atmosphere above the West Coast, we'll be right back with Bryce.